watching the Letterman podcast with Mike Chisholm, endorsed by the Hello Deli.
Yeah.
Hey Mike, it's Jeremy Weiner. Just wanted to reach out and wish you and the Letterman podcast a happy 1-year anniversary. Also wanted to let you know the McDonald's spicy chicken nuggets are made with tender, juicy white meat chicken and come with all your favorite dipping sauces. I'm contractually obligated to do that.
La, 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 la. Welcome once again to the Letterman podcast. I am Mike Chisholm. I am so excited. First thing I got to do is say thank you to everybody who has given us all the anniversary love with our episode with Paul last week and beyond. We've had a lot of well wishes, a lot of very cool referrals. Actually, today's episode is a referral, and I love that. As the community grows, they start referring other members of the community in all sorts of different vantage points. This is actually one of them. We got a faxer today. I'm excited to get a faxer on here because, the idea of faxing jokes in to a show that people love so much and then getting your stuff on the air, that's one thing. But to actually be so proficient at it that you actually get a job as a writer on the Late Late Show with Craig Kilborn. That's our guy today. His name's Adam Lorenzo. That's what happened to him. Then he ended up writing for Everybody Loves Raymond. So 3 pants properties, experience, and lots of things around that. I really became fast friends with Adam Lorenzo. I'm just really excited to unleash this particular episode. It's a lot of fun, all the way from his start with Al Franken. We start talking about a conversation he had with Al Franken that got him into the business, all the way to, all the way through Everybody Loves Raymond, all of that, to now he's an author. He just released a book, All I Need to Know, I Learned from My College Bar. See, when he was in college, he owned a bar. Not a joke. He did. And, All I Need to Know, I Learned from My College Bar is a very delightful publication. It's a delightful read. Lots of nuggets of streetwise type wisdom with delightful illustrations. It is a really, really entertaining project. You can get it. And there's the referral part. We got referred to him by Scott Ryan, who wrote Last Days of Letterman. And, you can get his book at FayettevilleMafiaPress.com. That's Scott's publishing company. All sorts of books they've released. A bunch of Twin Peaks books, Barbara Streisand book, his Moonlighting book, and many, many other ones. This book here from Adam Lorenzo, All I Need to Know, I Learned from My College Bar. Get it. It's $14.95. It makes a great gift for a student. It's a delightful, insightful book. Highly recommended. Very, very excited to have Adam on the show here. He is a friend of the show and will continue to be. We're just so grateful for what's been happening here. I'm going to stop talking now so we can hear about the life of a faxer and much, much more. Adam Lorenzo right here on the Letterman podcast. So the thing about this, like we're just talking about Paul here, about your book, the idea of going for your dreams, and that's something that the whole reason why the Letterman podcast exists is exactly that. Like, it was something that was, I'm literally doing it to scratch an itch, but it's turned into this thing. And that's what happens sometimes when you follow your passions, you follow the things that you want to do, it turns into something that you can't even imagine. And having Paul on was just like, holy crap, I can't believe that happened.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. Boy, I loved him in that Netflix special a couple years ago, the Christmas one.
Oh, God, Bill Murray's. Yeah.
It's so great. Yeah,
well,
that guy's a genius. He's so respected.
And I'm a Canadian too, so it's funny. Us Canadians, we have this thing in Canada, and I got to say it to him too, which was very, very cool. Whenever somebody, a local, and by local we mean a Canadian, if they just identify as a Canadian and they make good down south, we're always so excited about it. And the one thing I love about Paul is he hasn't shied away from his Canadianship. In fact, Dave used to bring it out there. Yeah. And I mean, he's received the Order of Canada. He's done all sorts of things there. And I'm very, very excited for the fact that he's inspired me to do that. I look at your story. and I find it inspiring. Like I'm really excited about being able to promote your book. Your book is, of course, All I Need to Know. I learned from my college bar. And in the intro to the book is fantastic because you really set the stage well of talking about things that have, I don't want to say they're things that just happen to you, because you do things and then things happen. And I think that's a real key. But some of the things that you did to turn into some of the things that happened is bonkers. And I'm very excited to talk about it. It made me smile ear to ear thinking about it, because I kind of feel vicariousness with what I'm doing with the Letterman podcast. So this is exciting. I'm excited to talk to you about this.
I'm excited to talk to you too. And I was most excited because when I watched the episode with your wife and I learned who you were, I could tell, your enthusiasm and passion for what you were doing. And I really loved it because that, before I became a writer, I was a fan, just like you. We were both just loving Letterman.
Yep.
So it's great. It's great to be here and to be talking to you. And I'm so glad that you did this. And I hope it takes off like a rocket.
Oh,
and
thanks,
it sounds
man.
like, it sounds like you have a lot of support on your side. Yeah. And there's so many people that love Dave. I was thinking, when I was watching your show, I don't know how much it's evolved since that episode, which wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
But you automatically, my brain goes to bits.
Yep.
And I thought it would be so funny to try to find one person to say something bad about Dave. Everyone loves the guy. Everyone loves everybody over there. So
it's true. Even when met Governor Palin, and when I met her to get that picture signed, the Letterman podcast, because partially a joke, but not really at the same time. Yeah. Even Governor Palin at that point, when we talked, like, she didn't have anything bad to say about him. Yeah. Like, it was, and I mean, they had a big dust up, a very public dust up, and she did, he's the greatest broadcaster, the greatest body of broadcasting work in history. That's how I see it. That's why this show exists, to celebrate that and all things around it, the spin-offs from it, the ripples in the pool, so to speak. But at the end of the day, I just really, really, really appreciate all of those who worked on Team Dave, because some of the culture it's transferable. Like I said this to Paul as we finish off. I'm like, okay, most of you won't take a compliment. Most of you minimize what you do. Most of you have this culture about you. I'm super excited to talk to you about this, because I've wanted to talk to a faxer, quote unquote. I hope that's not a derogatory term. I wanted to talk to a faxer for a long time. I reached out to Bill and I've been asking him, hey, can you give me some contact infos for some faxers? Because it's a very different deal. You've got somebody here who, like you say, understands the tone of the show because they know it so well. Dave broke the fourth wall like nobody else did, making us as viewers feel like we were a part of things. Yeah. You get the language down, you get the voice down and all of that, and suddenly you're putting in material that ends up on the show. I got to know when this happened for you and how it happened and what it felt like, not just receiving your first check, but when you actually heard Dave perform one of your jokes. Yeah. I can only imagine how that would feel.
Yeah. The faxing piece, you have to realize I knew nothing about the business. I knew nothing about writing. Yep. I hadn't written a word. I was running this bar. Oh, you said Canada earlier.
Yeah.
I ended up, before this all happened, before the transition, I don't talk much about this in the book, but I actually bought a second one in Alexandria Bay in the Thousand Islands up near Gananoque.
You're kidding.
Yeah, so check it out. So, we had two tills, one for Canadian money, one for American money. And it would go across the St. Lawrence River because it was the opposite season of the college bar in Syracuse. And I loved the Canadian people. They were the greatest. They'd come to drink cheaper beer.
Sure, absolutely. Yep.
And we had the loonies and toonies, and a guy on Monday would come and do the exchange rate. Yep. It was awesome. So, and I love Canada. I've been to many Blue Jay games and Montreal games, and I grew up in Buffalo, so I used to drive to Toronto to see concerts. So I love it. It's such a beautiful country.
Oh, that's awesome. I appreciate hearing that very, very much.
And
How
you guys
okay?
all, I'd say everybody I run into from Canada too, super cool. So
I hear that we're super nice. I mean, I love being a Canadian. I think that there is a bit of an inferiority complex to our big brother from the South. And so that's part of the reason why we get so excited when somebody does well down there, and you know, and a lot of funny people end up. We're from Canada, you know. People say it's because it's so cold, and you know, in the wintertime you stay in, you entertain yourselves, you watch TV and you entertain yourselves, and you glean off the funny. But yeah, I mean, SCTV was you know, the Canadian contingent. Like, I was a big John Candy fan.
yeah,
And yeah, oh yeah, and I mean, and the way that in the late 70s, when Canadians would merge with different like with the SNL troupe and those people, you know, there's a sensibility that's there. And I mean, you know, Chris Guest, I love his films and his humor and all of his ensembles and things. You look at something like Schitt's Creek, which was a Canadian production, you know, a CBC production, very Canadian. And so there is a voice and there's a culture, and usually it has to do with either humor or drinking beer. I think you nailed it. Which
Didn't Paul have something to do with that show? The
with
SCTV?
Schitt's Creek?
No, the SCTV and
Absolutely, with that crew. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when Paul came up, his first major splash in any showbiz endeavor was the production of Godspell that they did in Toronto, which had, I think Levy was part of it, but Gilda Radner was part of it. There's a whole crew of Marty Short, of course. And so that's where a lot of that fraternizing kind of started. And then Saturday Night Live, of course, solidified a lot of that as well. And they all knew each other, right? So yeah. And I talked to him a little bit. I tried to keep it as modern as possible with him, but I could have just talked to him about Andy Kaufman. I'm such an Andy Kaufman fan. And I mean, so we talked about that a little bit, and yeah, it was a fun show. And definitely some Canadiana in it. But let's get back to, how old were you? No, like, I want to hear this story, how this happened.
So how I got that first in at Dave's show. You know, just like you, love Dave, watch Dave every night, you know, never missed it. And even when I was in the bar business, you know, I was in college. So I was in school.
Syracuse, right?
Yeah, I went to Syracuse. I was attending Syracuse, owned this bar. And it was my life, you know, that's all I did every day. But I tell you, I always kept Dave on one of the TVs. And back then it's VCRs. I taped it every night. Now, I didn't know you could make a living being a writer. You know, you have to just realize, you have to just pretend I don't know. I mean, I don't know anything that I know now. You know, I figured maybe I'd be a lawyer, or, you know, get into something with politics. A lot of my stuff at first was political slant. As a matter of fact, one of the first guys I met too was Al Franken, who's an awesome guy too. And I've seen him hit golf balls off the top of the Ed Sullivan Theater. He was always a fun guest.
He's a dream guest for us. I love Senator Franken and his sensibilities, and I love him and Dave, how they connect together. Al Franken is amazing. That's cool. That's one of the first people you met. Yeah,
one of the first people I met, and it went so well with Al that the day I met him, we met at a Starbucks. One of the producers that was creating the Late Late Show with Dave was a guy named Billy Kimball. Who's an incredible writer. You know, he just won a bunch of Emmys, I think, for Veep. On HBO, and he's been on The Simpsons. But he's an incredible, and he's a really awesome man. So I had met him in New York. And he had, you know, they liked my material. They had been buying some of my stuff. And he created the Late Late Show with Dave. And he went to Harvard, Billy. And I had never heard of the Harvard Lampoon or anything. You're talking about a guy who was running a couple bars, you know, while I was going to school. I didn't know what was going on. He said, I remember it was one of the first things he said, you know, ran the Harvard Lampoon. Terrific.
And he would have been a little bit later. He would have been a generation or two after Conan, right?
No, when you say a generation or two after Conan, you mean Graduation?
At the Lampoon, yeah.
I don't know. They may have crossed paths because I think they know each other. People might know each other from.
Well, it seems like they all do. Like Jeff Martin was a few years ahead of Conan, but like it seems like that Harvard group we could probably do an entire podcast just based on that Harvard group and the spider webs that come out from that as well. So you met Billy.
So I was at Syracuse though. I didn't
Yeah.
go to, so I didn't know all of this stuff.
No.
That he was talking about. It sounded impressive though. I knew it was impressive. My gut was, this is an impressive guy. And then but he says, we don't have any jobs. We're going to start this new show in LA, but we don't have any jobs now. But I wanted to meet you because we bought a lot of stuff and, we're getting started and we're looking for voices.
Yeah.
And I was kind of devastated on the way home because I bought a shirt and tie for the meeting. I took the train to New York to Tribeca. I remember I was sweating like crazy. I was so nervous. He showed up like, half hour late. He was wearing ripped jeans and flip flops. But anyway, so then a couple days later, though, to my amazement, my phone rings and it's Al Franken. And Al says, I'm buddies with Billy, and he gave me a bunch of your material, and I'd like to meet with you. So I went back into the city, same shirt and tie, but Al busted my chops for wearing the shirt and tie. He said, "You wear that for me?" And it went so well at the Starbucks. He said, "Well, you want to come back to my house and we'll go over your jokes and we'll do a little writing." And I went over there. I met his wife. The dog was running around. I think I met his daughter at the time, and it was really. I mean, for one of the first people to meet, can't meet a nicer guy. So that's how I met him.
Can I ask you about that? Like, because that fascinates me right there. Yeah. You're being plucked and put into something that, like, I mean, you're a fan of Dave and all that stuff. So I mean, Franklin Davis on I assume you would have seen him on SNL and all these things.
I knew who Al was. I was beyond excited. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. And so he's got a process because he's a hardened, longtime writer at this point. You really are flying by the seat of your pants. Like, again, you did stuff to make this happen, but this kind of just sort of fell in your lap and this is happening. Were there any like learning curve stuff that was really obvious at the beginning when you went over to his house to write stuff? Or was it like, did it fit like a glove? And you're like, no, I'm a fast learner, and you just started getting into it?
Since I was a kid, inexplicably, I knew I wanted to be a writer. Since I was a kid, for no reason. I didn't know a writer, but something in my heart knew I was supposed to be a comedy writer. Now, I was always funny and stuff, but when you don't grow up in an environment around entertainment, you don't know. For me, it was survival. How do I pay my rent? How do I, pay the bills?
Yeah. How does it transfer?
Dreams, not so. When I met him, I mean, I still remember the day, when I met Al in the city. I remember I was really nervous. I remember the mall I went to buy my shirt and tie and new pants. I remember how much I was sweating as I was walking from Grand Central Station to, the Starbucks. I got lost. I remember, being nervous in the bathroom, wiping off. I didn't want him to see me sweat.
Wow.
That's
what I'm picturing. That's how it would be for me too. That. Yeah. Okay.
And then when we went over to his place, it was just like, I've always been kind of a spiritual guy too.
Yeah.
So I've always, and I just listened to his, before he became in my life, in this inexplicable way, I had just listened to his book, that the audio book of the Rush Limbaugh and the Big Fat Idiot one, right?
Yep. He read it too, right?
Yeah, that's right. He narrated.
Yeah. So that's
the fact that I had just listened to it. Now he was here. I just felt like everything was flowing.
Yeah.
And he had my material, in his little writer's office, and and I just thought, I've got to just go with this here. And I don't think I had enough awareness to question it. I still have this. I remember before I left, he wrote his name on a yellow Post-it with his phone number, and he put it on the joke, like nonchalant. I'll talk to you Monday. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, I got the Post-it. I still have it. It's framed in my office.
Okay. We're very similar when it comes to this. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it was a thrill. And he, you mentioned the fax thing later.
Yeah.
When I ended up getting the job, Al gave me some really great guidance when I moved out to LA from New York. And he said, when you transition, because he's the one who really encouraged me to start the transition from late night to sitcom.
Yep.
Said, you really need to start writing sitcoms. Scripted is where you belong. And so I remember he said, tell everybody that you got that job on the Late Late Show as a staff writer by faxing, because I'm pretty sure you're the last guy through the door.
Wow.
I really got lucky, because then it was computers like crazy, man.
Absolutely.
I don't know if it could have happened. So
that is, and one of the things I appreciate so much about Senator Franken is how he's brilliant. Like he's clearly, like, he's hilarious, but he's a brilliant hilarious. And if he wants to just turn off the hilarious and just turn up, or just keep the brilliant there, his the way he can observe things, and what a gift that he analyzed that about you, analyzed that about your skill set, and found a way to kind of plug that into something that complements your skill set and allows you to do this. Like, again, I haven't talked about this on the show so much, but I mean, I have a financial firm, small little fledgling fighting financial firm, because I connected the dots that I was supposed to connect, get a job, the wife, the family, all that kind of stuff. Right. But this broadcaster part of me is exactly what you were talking about, that writer part of you. And the fact that you had somebody like that, who, when you were young and impressionable and just kind of getting into it, could analyze what your skill set was and give you a place where you could actually do that and exercise some of those gifts that you have and get paid for it. That is astounding that Al Franken is one of the people that could do that for you. That's what a gift that is, man. Like that's right. Awesome.
I don't take any of those people for granted. That, anybody who ever said you're funny, anyone who ever said, you should try this, I remember when I bartended every night, and I would look at myself in the reflection of the front window. And I remember thinking, like, this isn't what I want to do forever. And those guys who would come in who were owners of bars in their 50s, and they were like really successful. But I would look at them and I would think, man, I don't want to be that guy. And you know what those winners are like. And there was a dumpster next to Maggie's. You throw the garbage in, you and the bouncers, you throw it in, and if you didn't close the lid, the garbage company wouldn't pick up the dumpster and empty it. It was like an ordinance of the city. So I'd have to jump in the dumpster out, when the bar's closed, and I'm jumping to get the garbage bags down. And I remember, and everybody's gone. It's just me in the snow and the silence. And that's when I was like, I gotta try to figure out this writing thing. This can't be my life. And I mean, that's really serious. That's not an embellishment. Those were the moments when I was like literally in the garbage, thinking, I don't care what it takes. I've got to figure out how to pursue my dream. And I was really young, so I knew I can't, I don't want to do this forever. So the first thing that ever happened on Letterman. I was really, you're talking about someone with no idea. So it's really interesting what the first thing was. He did, and I know and is Rupert G still the sponsor and stuff? I love that.
Absolutely. There's our boy right there.
Oh, I love that.
Hey, I don't know if you know, he officially announced the bar. I'm thinking about the bar with the deli's for sale. The deli's for sale.
He's going to make a killing.
Well, yeah. And
that's fantastic.
And he wants to sell it to the right person. Like, I love that about Rupert. He's so thoughtful and kind and everything. He's a precious friend. And he's the only sponsor of the Letterman podcast. Might as well say it right now. The only place to get
his store. I've been in it.
There you go. I want to get him before he closes to do a Mike Chisholm sandwich, if he will, for the last couple months. I don't know if he'll do it or not, but he might.
I grew up on him. So the first thing that happened, you remember that Dave had a bit, I don't know if it was Thursday night or Friday night, he did the mailbag.
Absolutely. The CBS mailbag. Yep. Viewer mail at late night, the CBS mailbag on Late Show.
So now I'm transitioning, thinking in my head, I got to get out of the bar business. I want to write. I had never written anything. I'm starting just to put my foot in the water a little. And they had like a Letterman this is in the embryonic stages of websites and stuff.
Yeah.
There was this Dave Letterman website.
Yeah.
And I watched it every day. I'd go watch the monologue, it was awesome. I'd watch the show, I'd watch the website.
Yep.
And there was, like, I kind of remember this. I don't remember exactly, but there was like a part of the site where if you wanted to send a letter to Dave, there was an address and it kind of gave you the format or something. This is loose, fast and loose with the facts. I don't remember it exactly.
No, absolutely.
But I do remember this. I wrote a letter from a fictitious name. I thought, ooh, this would make a funny bit if they did this on CBS Mailbag.
Yeah.
And I came up with this character and and I sent it in. And I'll be darned, a month or two later, they do the bit. So I can't believe it, right? I can't believe it. I'm like, this has got to mean.
Do you remember what it was?
Sure. I mean, I don't remember the exact thing, but
no, but that's okay. You give us some context. Yeah. Giller will come in and we'll have the clip and all that stuff. Yeah, yeah.
So it was one of. I sure would love to see that clip actually.
Oh,
it was
Walter, are you listening?
The funny thing is, I remember my dad taped it, and then he taped over it. So, so I would love.
That's the life we grew up in, folks. Right there.
That's right.
It's there and then it's gone forever, or so you think.
So it was this note. I think I wrote it on a yellow legal pad piece of paper, and it was about a guy. Yeah. This was the bit. It was about a guy who he had a brother-in-law who owed him a bunch of money.
Okay.
And he stiffed him on it.
Yep.
And so the character said, "So Dave, will you help me get my money back?"
Perfect.
So they did the bit, and the bit was, so we got a hold of Joe Smith, and we brought him to New York, and we put him up at the plaza, and we gave him, a car, and it was awesome. So that was that's how that first got in. And now here's the funny part. So now it happens. I'm so green. I call the show.
Awesome.
I say, hey, I just got a CBS Mailbag on. What am I getting paid?
Awesome. That's fantastic.
So this guy, I have no idea who he is. He's so nice. He sends me 2 tickets to go see Letterman.
Oh, that's cool.
Do. So cool. So now you have to realize, now the manifestation is happening. I go, bring my girlfriend. I'm like out of my mind. I'm waiting in line. I'm pretty much pitching anybody I see, the security guards, anybody related to the show. How do you get the job on the show?
Right now. I can put myself in your skin right now hearing that. That's the child, the inner child has his grubby little hands, as I like to say, around the wheel. And it's just, yes, absolutely. I love it.
And they were great seats.
Yeah.
And, being there live, seeing Paul, seeing Dave, hearing the smashing glass, it was Christmas. And I don't remember the guest's name, but it was this woman who sang the Ave Maria. And it was like goosebumps, so beautiful. Regis was filling in for a guest who couldn't make it.
Awesome.
I remember the camera guy did a quick shot of my girlfriend, and it made me so mad that he didn't take a shot of me, but she got on the thing. I kept that video too for a long time. I would love to see that. But anyway, so, that experience, visualizing it, being there, putting it in my brain, that really helped me, because it made me realize I can do this. This is possible.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was the first thing. And then, months later, and some of this isn't exact.
Yeah.
Because I'm still working my tail off. And anybody you talk to about writing, they say you can't, it's feast or famine, it's crazy.
Yep.
It's mostly drug addicts, and a lot of that's true, but
sure.
The
stereotypes come from somewhere, but yeah.
And so, one day I called the show and I said, how do you get a job on the show? Now, I had tried that day when I was live to really get it in,
Yeah.
talking to security guards. I'm sure I talked to, 30 people,
Yep.
ushers.
Yep.
Probably Rupert. I probably pitched Rupert. And I'm not kidding. I probably did.
And he's so kind. He'd probably be like, well, maybe go talk to yeah.
So I called the show, and so finally I had the nerve to say, how do you get a job on the show? And whoever it was said, you need to have an agent, or do you have an agent, something like that. Do you know one of the writers? Is that why you're calling? Because we have a joke list that we pay. It was like $75 or $100 a joke.
Ding. There. Okay. Valuable piece of information there.
Yeah. And I said, no, I don't know any of the writers,
Yep.
And I hung up, and that was it. And so that night I watched the credits, and I just picked a name of one of the writers, and I called back the next day, and I got a different person, and I said, hey, I know so-and-so says I could be on some kind of joke list. And they said, yeah, we love so-and-so. We'll send you a release. And they sent me a release. And then, I went to the local CVS or drugstore. It wasn't a CVS. It was like whatever drugstore was nearby the next morning. Got the, New York Post and the USA Today. And, and I thought I better try to figure out what these jokes are supposed to look like, And I had a Brother word processor. It wasn't a computer, Brother word processor. So, and it prints out to, I'm sure I woke up everybody in the apartment building. And I would wait for the New York Post. I'd wait in front of the store until the guy would throw it off the truck. I couldn't wait. And now, and that's the spiritual part. I mean, I sat down and what are these jokes? And it just came natural. I didn't know what it was supposed to look like. I didn't know really what I was supposed to do, but I did it. And the day disappeared. And I'd send in, a lot of jokes. I mean, a lot, 10 pages, 11 pages. And that's what I would do. And then I'd be glued to the TV. And then, and then boom, there's a joke. And then at the same moment, this is really incredible how it happens when I talk about it. It really, I can't believe it. But at the same time, they're promoting the heck out of, we're starting a new show. It was like regular and extra crispy, Dave and Kilborn.
Yep.
So they're promoting the heck out of it. Dave's promoting the heck out of it. The commercials are, and I'm watching Dave, and then I'm watching this new show with Craig.
Yep.
So again, I don't miss a day. I'm faxing, and I fall in love with it. I'm obsessed. It's like, cool. I mean, all day. Is he going to say one of mine? Is he going to say one of mine? What else could I come up with? That whole getting a CBS mailbag thing just got me going. You know, and then being there live got me going. And I called to try to go again, by the way. And they're like, you get one set of tickets. So, but I was that, I had to do it. Something in my belly was like, you got to do it. And so then what happened was it went from a joke on Letterman.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, maybe a few, then all of a sudden, Craig Kilborn would tell a joke of mine. And I'd think, is that a coincidence? Did a writer write one of my, because, you don't know. I don't know. Is that
absolutely possible? Many times one event happens, five versions of the same joke kind of show up based on it. The observance.
So this is what happens. I get a call then, and it happens more than once. It happens 5-6 times or something. And then I start to put it together. But what was confusing is Kilborn's in Los Angeles, Letterman's in New York. For someone, a bar owner, I don't understand that that's possible. That it's those two
pants thing,
no idea that they could be connected.
Yeah.
But I get a call from Jim Peterson, who used to be run Worldwide Pants, or VP, I think, whatever it was. He was the nicest guy.
Yeah.
And he says, we're going to send you some checks. We owe you some money. We're buying some material from you, and we're going to send a producer to meet you. That was Billy. And we're starting this new show, and we've been giving your material to the Late Late Show. And I said, it kind of makes sense, because I've been wondering what's going on. And they were cool. I bet you they didn't let 2 weeks go by before I heard from them. But at this point, it wasn't just like one joke or two jokes. They had bought a lot of jokes, and it went from one joke to the monologue to starting to do some bits, desk chats and stuff. I mean, I really took some big swings, and that's how and then that's how and then I met Billy again. He said no jobs, but we are staffing. We're going to staff soon in LA. And I remember he said to me, "Do you know anybody in LA?" And I had never been to California. I don't know anything about it. And I said, no. And he said, that's too bad. He said, it would make me feel a lot better if you had like an aunt, because sometimes these jobs can be revolving doors. And I remember that stayed with me to this day, because I thought
the whole 13-week contract thing, right? For writers.
Yeah. And I thought, that guy was really looking out for me. I mean, that's a writer who's a friend of a writer. But I was crestfallen. But right before we left, even though he said they didn't have any jobs, and this was now a few days before I met Al, Billy said, whatever you do, though, he said, don't stop faxing.
Oh,
so that stayed with me. And I think there was I kind of have a memory of it being Thanksgiving-ish or something, because I remember my girlfriend at the time was driving and I was in the passenger seat, writing jokes, and had to get them in. You had to get them in by a deadline. And I later learned, I don't even think they were in the office that day, but I sent them anyway. They were we came back and there were all these faxes from 2 days worth of jokes that no one was even here for. But I really was obsessed, and I loved it, and the reward of being recognized for it. And then you're catching me, unfortunately, in my I sold my house recently, so all my stuff is in storage. So I have every check stub from Worldwide Pants and the company, I think, was Trousers. And I kept every check stub. I kept the envelopes from Worldwide Pants, and they're all they're all safely in a box.
I'm a collector, and we're actually going to have little offshoots on the level. We've got one coming out next week. We've got a guy who is showing off a bunch of his collectibles that he has from Late Show and things like that. So I'm going to have you back on when you're settled and all that, and you want to gather some of your stuff, you want to show it off.
So
we're gonna do that. So that's great. So there's a part 2 coming right there.
That's great. And and it was so special. I was really tempted not to cash the first check. These are stubs.
I can totally relate. Yep. Put it up on the wall.
But I did cash it, and it was great. But I did keep this one Letterman thing I thought you'd like. That's with me because I'm superstitious, so I keep all my lucky stuff. But for the Everybody Loves Raymond baseball team, I have my
that's awesome.
My baseball uniform still. I keep it in my
that's fantastic.
Yeah. So
how did you guys have some game?
Yeah, we played great. Everybody on the Raymond team were awesome. They were awesome ball players, and it was talk about experiences. That was the first sitcom that I was ever exposed to. I went from late night. I'll tell you a good story. You want to hear a good story about how I got into? I mean, the Letterman one's good.
Absolutely.
You're gonna like it. One of the people when and you're gonna understand me a little more and why it all kind of felt natural, like when I was with Al and everything. One of the people who encouraged me to be a writer was my ex-wife. So when I got that gig, when I got the staff writing job, when Jim Peterson called and Craig called, I kept that answering machine tape too. It's in storage, but I kept it. We're calling to welcome you on board of the Late Late Show. Give us a call. And when they called, they said, we have good news and bad news. And I said, what's the news? And they said, we're going to offer you a position as a staff writer on the Late Late Show. Great. What is
That's
that?
good news.
What does it mean? I mean, I only care about, what are the, when do I have to move there? How is this going to affect my life? Am I going to be able to do it from New York? Because the idea of moving to California is not even in my head. Because again, I'm thinking I'm sending everything to New York. I'm getting paid from New York. Anyway, so when they say, and I told Billy I don't know anybody. They're going to probably let me keep just doing this. And they said, no, I remember it was a Friday. So they said, the good news is we're offering it to you. I said, what's the bad news? And they said, you got to let us know by the end of the day today. And you have to be here by Sunday night because you start work on Monday. Now, here's the thing. At this point, I had just gotten engaged. Our engagement party was that Sunday.
Wow.
So I hang up the phone. I'm like, oh my God, thank you, God. This is a dream come true. I cannot believe this is happening.
Yes.
My girlfriend comes home from work. She was my fiance. I tell her, she's happy for me, but
what does this mean? Yeah, like
I'm moving on Sunday, right? So we're at the engagement party. I'm telling jokes to everybody. What was the joke you got on last night? What's the thing? And it was, it was a really weird situation. Obviously, I had to pursue my dream, and she had this incredible family in New York, a couple sisters and a brother, and her mom was awesome. And, I didn't have any of that. I had nothing to lose coming out here. It was this had to happen.
Yep.
So anyway, but right before that, one of the people who encouraged me to be a writer was her family. My now ex-wife's family. They had a friend who was a nun, a Franciscan nun, and her name was Sister Virginia. And a Franciscan nun, if you don't know, is like the most disciplined kind of nun. They don't have possessions. They're just beyond cool. Yeah. And I remember one time I was at a dinner, like a charity dinner, and the Sister Virginia says, I know you own this bar, but what do you really want to do with your life? Excuse me. And I said, well, Sister Virginia, I really want to be a writer, but I don't know what that means, And she said, you've got to pursue that. You can always come back and be a bar owner or be a lawyer or, dig ditches. I remember she specifically said that. But you should go for your dream. So now here's the thing. And she even said, oh, I know somebody who's a writer in Los Angeles. Okay, Sister Virginia. This is in Schenectady, New York. She lives in a convent in Schenectady, New York. Wow. So now I move out here, get my job. I'd never been to California. I move out that Sunday. They pick you up at the airport. They put, the Writers Guild, they send me a contract, Writers Guild and everything. Very cool. Yep. They move you. They have to pay for the move. I don't have a car or anything, and so now I've been out here for a little bit. I heard Frank Sinatra got buried at the Good Shepherd Church in Beverly Hills, so I thought, I'll go there for church. Mm-hmm. I heard there was a good gym down the block that was called Easton Gym. I'd go to the gym. There was a movie theater around. I'm walking all around LA.
Awesome.
Showing up super early, like I talk about in the introduction of the book, seeing Dan Rather get out of the helicopter.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah. So now, though,
your office was beside a helipad.
It's unbelievable, man. Yeah. Basketball court and a helipad. So now, as I'm getting ready though to transfer, this is a couple of years later or whatever. I have a bunch of spec scripts written to get into sitcom. How am I going to get into sitcom? Yeah. And there's a pocket in Los Angeles called Larchmont. The regular barber I go to gets Parkinson's. So I get a haircut and everybody I see that day, what the heck is wrong with your hair? What the heck is wrong with your hair? I said, what are you talking about? It's all crooked and everything. I don't even notice. I'm just going around. So one of my buddies from the Late Show, I said, I need a barber. And he says, well, you gotta, you go to Larchmont. You'll love Larchmont. It's like New York. And I go and I find this old school barber. His name was Jerry Catone. Awesome.
And that's a great barber name.
Isn't that great?
Put on a
He's
Jerry
great.
Catone. He'll fix you right up.
Sicilian.
Oh,
Well, wait till you hear how this goes, man. Wait till you hear this goes. You've already got the character. So I sit down, getting my haircut fixed from the other guy, and there's a picture of Ray Romano on the wall. And I said, geez, Jerry, I'm trying to get into the world of sitcoms. Does Ray Romano come in here to get his haircut? And he said, no, one of his producers does. But Adam, I can't get involved. He's an old guy. He said one of the rules of being a barber is you got to let everything stay private. I wouldn't be able to cut hair.
Yep.
But I have my late show Worldwide Pants business cards with my name on. I carry them everywhere. I give them to everybody I see. You know what I mean? The guy gives me coffee. Boom. I'm giving my cards outside.
Legitimacy.
I have a couple of those left too. So when I get my stuff out of storage, I'll show you those.
Absolutely.
And stationery. They give you stationery too. So cool.
I have Late Show stationery. This is the Late Show pencil that I'm using right now. Like no, you're preaching to the choir, man. Like I've got one of these, the double-ended ones. Like
oh god,
you're preaching to the choir, man. This bridge from the set, like you're preaching to the choir.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. And it also just reminded me of another good story you're gonna love after this about the set. So anyway,
awesome.
So I go into the barber. I say to Ray Romano. He says, no, producer does. I give him a Letterman card anyway. I said, well, I worked for Dave. He moved me out here. And he says, okay. And he's pretty firm. Don't bring it up again. He scares me a little. But I see he gives me a good haircut, and it was cheap. So I go back to get the haircut, and a few months later, I couldn't believe it. He says, I don't know what it is about you. He said, I've never done it before. He said, I gave your card to that producer, and I vouched for you.
Oh my gosh!
Exactly, brother. Exactly. So he says, but look, the show's done. It's in its last season. The guy specifically told me to tell you that. They don't buy outside scripts. There's no chance. They're getting ready to close up shop.
Yeah.
And he said, maybe he will call you to go see a show. I said, thank you so much. I didn't know what else to say. I was so grateful. I don't know what to tell you. That was the nicest thing.
Yeah.
This guy calls me. He said, I've been going to Jerry to get my hair cut for a long time. He's never done anything like this. He said, so come to a show. Do not bring me any scripts. It's against every rule.
Yeah.
I had written, I still remember, I had written like 18 spec scripts by now. I'd run out of popular shows. You write a spec script of popular shows to show you can do it.
Yep.
At that time, that was the thing.
Yep.
And so I had written every Bernie Mac and, every show that was a King of Queens, whatever show was on, I wrote a spec script for.
Yep.
And I sent it to every person I met, And so I bring 3 scripts with me to the taping.
Of course.
And I meet the guy and he says, I told you not to bring any scripts. I said, I got to take the shot. And he says, all right, how about I take the top one?
Awesome.
And I had written out of all modern ones, so I wrote a Dick Van Dyke because I loved old Dick Van Dyke and stuff like that. I'd go to so the way I learned how to write jokes was just I wrote them. I didn't know what they look like or format or anything. So the same thing with sitcoms. And then I'd go to the TV museum in Los Angeles in Beverly Hills. And on Thursdays, they'd stay open late. And I'd watch old shows. I'd bring a stopwatch and a legal pad, and I would time each scene. Each scene is like this long, a joke every so many seconds, and that's what I was doing.
Yep.
So they had a lot of Dick Van Dyke, so I'd do that. Never missed it. Never missed watching it. Did it, and he took it, and I watched the show, and it was awesome.
If I can interject something here, what you were doing, it didn't feel for a second like work, did it?
Not. The day I could, to this day, I jump out of bed practically in the morning to write. I love it. I love what I do so much. And, and I feel like it's a gift and it's a blessing. And, we're talking about, I got that gig on the Late Late Show in 1999. It's 2023. I don't think I've ever gone a day or two without writing all day. It's like air to me. So, when people say go on vacation, or we went to vacation, on vacation somewhere or something, I love LA. It's the best, it's just the best. I love New York too. I'm a Yankees fan, and I'm from back east, but
I love both. I love both as well. They're two of my favorite American cities, New York and LA, for different reasons. I'm a gigantic Kings fan first and foremost, so I go down to LA to watch the Kings. But
people go on vacation, and to me, it's like my life is, I do what I love. LA is so he takes the top script. After the show, this is where the story gets good. So he comes to me and he says, look, he said, you happen to there was a Dick Van Dyke, the creator of the show, Phil Rosenthal, who, might be the nicest guy in all of Hollywood, if not the world. He says, it happens to be one of Phil's favorite shows, Dick Van Dyke. So this is good. So great. And he says, there's something about you. I think Ray would like you, Ray Romano. He said, so why don't you hang out? We're going to have you come up to the dressing room after and meet him. Because they were giving me respect because I worked for Dave.
Yeah.
On the Late Late Show.
Well, you're a fellow Pants alumni in that regard. Yeah.
Again, though, it was like the day I met Al. I don't know what's happening. It's the first time I'm on a sitcom set. First time I'm on a stage lot. Nervous as all heck. He takes me up to the green room. Ray's there. All these guys that have won all these Emmys. Lou Schneider. Mike Scully, who ran The Simpsons.
The Simpsons, yeah. Holy cow!
All these guys. And Ray, so you're a funny guy. Let's see how funny you are. We're punching up a script. Let's see what you got. And I remember the light was kind of dim, and we just sat there, and I was throwing some jokes out, and it was the time of my life. I couldn't even believe it.
Wow.
So they walked me to my car. This producer walks me to my car, and and he says, take care. I'm sorry we don't have any jobs, but it was really, really nice to meet you, and I hope you had a good time, and don't stop writing, and just so encouraging and kind. And and I drive home, and it's I'm in Los Angeles. I'm driving home from the Warner Brothers lot, from the it was like probably the #1 or certainly the top 3 comedies at the time. Back then they would be like 18, 19 million people that would watch. It was
that was a gigantic show.
Unbelievable. Thank you. Now, the producer calls me a few days later. He says, Adam, really strange question for you. Do you know a nun back east named Sister Virginia?
Shut up.
I said, Sister Virginia from Schenectady? He goes, yeah. I said, how do you know her? She's like, she's like a mom to me. She encouraged me to be a writer. And he says, well, you're never going to believe this, man. He goes, but me and Ray were doing stand-up in upstate New York. I don't, some of this I don't remember exactly, but they were doing stand-up, and they went to go get cannoli after the stand-up, and they go into a bakery called Malozzi's Bakery, and they get some cannoli, and then they, fly back to LA, and something, again, I don't know the exact details, but Ray becomes friends with the guy in Schenectady, Malozzi's Bakery guy, and Ray or the producer, Tom, I'm not sure who was, but they would exchange notes. And I think even the bakery guy would FedEx Ray cannoli, frozen cannoli on tape day or something. There was some really cool story. But one day, there was a note in there from a nun, Sister Virginia, who knew the baker. And she says, I know a guy who just moved to LA named Adam Lorenzo, and if you ever run into this guy, will you please give him a meeting? And there's a business card in it. So the producer says to me, he says, so when you leave the office the other night after the taping, Friday night, Ray says, is there any chance that guy is the guy that baker said the nun vouched for, He goes, so we looked, and they had the letter still because it was from a nun. And they go, and they said, and we found your business card in there. Sister Virginia had sent them my Late Late Show business card.
Wow.
So, right? Goosebumps.
Wow.
Goosebumps. I know. So anyway, so they said, so this is what, we'll call you back. So they called back and they said, we're gonna have you come in and pitch. You know, don't expect anything.
And they're in the last year at this point.
In the last year, they're ready to close up shop, and they say, you know, I mean, it ended up going another year or two.
Okay.
But at that time,
yeah.
I'm told, or what I remember is,
yeah. Yeah.
And you know that I think they did that a couple times during negotiations. You know,
yeah, for sure.
And then, okay, we'll give everybody $100 million an episode. Okay, we'll do another year.
Yeah. All the big sitcoms, all the biggest sitcoms from Cheers all the way down, Seinfeld, Friends, all of that ended up doing an extra 2 years after the fact that they were done because of stuff like that. So and Raymond is one of those sitcoms. It's that big.
And that's how I got in. You know, they set up the pitch. I had never pitched before. And it was cool, you know, because I actually, when I was a boy, I had really bad OCD, horrible OCD. I would touch food to my chin before I ate it. It was the craziest thing. I got bullied mercilessly as a result of it. But I had noticed that one of the characters did something like that. Robert, you know, played by Brad Garrett.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'd watched every episode. You know, when I went to I watched every episode, so I knew what I was talking about before the pitch. I don't know how many there were, maybe 187, 200 or something. But I remember this producer, this guy was so nice. He got his assistant to get me a copy of every episode. So I had this box of every episode, and I would sit. I mean, I watched that in like a week. That's all I thought about, you know. And you know, and I just like with joke writing, I thought I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go in with you know, this is the #1 comedy in the world. They're going to have to drag me out of the room. They're going to have to call security. You know, I mean, I am not going down without swinging. So I brought in like 18 pages of, 18, 19 pages of material to pitch for stories. I've always been super prolific, you know, and again, I think that's not me. I think that's a gift, you know, otherworldly, higher power stuff.
Well, and when you're not feeling like it's work and you're in the pocket of your passion, there's like Elizabeth Gilbert talks about that in her book Big Magic. She talks about how you're in a flow state, or you watch the movie Soul, you know, the Pixar movie Soul. You get into that zone and it's this different place, right? Like, yeah.
You're absolutely right. It's exactly what it is. And you know, and I love everybody who gets in that place. You know, you see it with athletes, with, you know, I can tell you do what you're
I'm in it right now, Adam. Like this is my happy place right now, what's going on. So yes.
Awesome. I can see it, you know, and I can hear it, and I respect it with everybody, no matter what it is. You know, it wasn't long ago. I remember I got this flat tire. It was like Christmas Eve, and it was really, you know, it was like, I love LA, every part of it, but it was a weird part of town. I was on my way somewhere, and I got the flat tire, and the guy who comes to, you know, from roadside assistance, he gets out of his truck. He's like the happiest guy in the world, whistling, and I thought, if I was that guy right now, I would kill myself.
Yes.
Right.
I think that about UPS drivers. UPS drivers, I'm like, I could never do that job. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Everybody's got something different they're supposed to do. And probably if you told the guy who was changing my tire, you know what you have to do tomorrow? You got to sit at a desk and you got to write all day. He'd say, I'm going to kill myself.
Yep.
So anyway, so I go in and pitch, and I had pitched a bunch of stuff and to Raymond. And one of the stories I pitch is about when I was a kid. I had really bad OCD and this crazy chin thing that got bullied. And right before I went in, Ray and a couple of the other guys who were like, you know, they couldn't have been nicer to me.
Yeah.
You know, they were like, oh, here's your first pitch. Yeah, we'll give, you know, I remember Lou Schneider coming up to me. This is, you know, this just be yourself. And here's a piece of advice. You know, if everybody, all the writers start talking after you pitch something, just don't say anything. It's good news if they like your idea. They
because the brainstorming is going on now.
If it's fertile ground.
Yeah. There you go.
So, you know, and it really was such a thrill. You know, I'm there in this office. You know, it's the first time through a gate like that, and the Warner Brothers is spectacular, and you know, and they treat you. I've never seen all this stuff, and you know, and they've got all the awards, and it really was something. And I go in, and it's a big conference room and it's very intimidating, and Phil's at the head of the table and he's super kind, and, and I sit down and I pitch, and it was probably the second or third one. I pitched this story about the touching of the food to the chin and what it meant and what that would mean for this character and what that story would be. And Phil starts talking, so I know immediately to be quiet. And they talk for a little while. And then Phil sees my stack of ideas, and he says, I see you did your homework over there. And he says, I'll let you decide. You could continue to pitch us, or you could think about what we all just said and leave now, whatever you feel more comfortable doing. And I just remembered that advice. So I thought, I think I better leave, because they were talking for a while. So I said, I feel hopeful. And, and I left, and I didn't hear anything for a long time, like a month.
Weeks? A month. Oh man.
But this is before cell phones, man. I would be at payphones all over LA checking my messages. Come on, I felt so good about that pitch. I felt, like just checking, please be a message, please be a message. I still remember it every day, 3-4 times a day. I'd pull over, put the money in the payphone, and call my, call my thing. And then one day, there was a message. This is, from Raymond, and we're gonna give you an offer on your script idea about the OCD and the chin. Call us. And so that was it. That was my break into the world of scripted TV, and it was a spectacular experience. I was so honored to work with those men and women on that show, and they treated me so nice. And being there at the taping, and I still remember, this was really cool. The night of the taping, tons of people hung out after the show to get autographs on their program from me. And I remember the producers that never happens. They don't wait for like this and it just felt so good to, wow. And then the honor of honors, Phil ended up submitting that episode for Emmy consideration, one of the 3 or 4 that year. And, look, you can't, I don't take any of it for granted. I worked hard to get there, and I know that I earned it, but I also know that it was a blessing, and I know that I was very lucky to get it. And, and that's this, and that was the second time I worked for Dave, which was very special. So anyway, that's how I got in, and then I was cooking, after that, and it was a very special experience. I loved it, and the episode was called Crazy Chin, and I'm very proud of it. It was great. So I got the story credit, and then the teleplay credit was from Mike Royce and Tom Cultibiano. Yeah, and and I got to work with those guys on it, and they were really nice to me. And before I left, the show, they all asked, are there people making calls for you? Do you need anything? What do you say, right?
How good does that feel?
Yeah, what do you say? It's like the next. Now what's really cool is I try to take those examples that I was given early on with that kind of behavior. Yep. And I try to do that. I try to pay that forward when I can. And
absolutely.
And then, this is a cool fact too. So years later, I ended up working on Everybody Hates Chris, which was based on Chris Rock's life.
I was going to ask you about that, because I know a couple of people who worked there as well.
Good, we'll talk. We'll talk about. Matter of fact, Frank Sebastiano, huge Letterman guy.
Oh, man. Okay, there's a guy I'd like to connect with. Jay and Nicole Ryan. Do you know Jay Ryan or Nicole Ryan?
No.
Nicole did press for. She was Chris Rock's. She was in his promotions.
I may know her.
And Jay actually worked. I believe Jay worked on the production, but I think we'll be able to connect a couple people for sure with them. They're good friends of mine.
So, but I think I'm the only person, the only writer who's got the Everybody Loves Raymond and
Everybody Hates Chris.
I think I'm that. And Chris allegedly came up with that name as a joke.
Totally. Yeah. That's what I had heard.
That was pretty cool for me too, to think that those dots, connected down the line. And that show was, co-created by Chris Rock and Ollie Leroy, who's, he's probably Thai as the nicest guy in Hollywood with Phil. You know,
Oh, that's
Ollie's like, I mean, he's unbelievable, and he's so funny and great. And he hired me on that show, and then he hired me on Are We There Yet?
yeah.
Which was with Terry Crews and Ice Cube, and
Yep.
that was one of those 1090s, you know, where you shoot 100 in a year. So anyway, so that's
Can I ask you a question though about something you said earlier?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of our viewers and whatnot, one of the things that we're trying to teach the public a little bit about the entertainment business. I'll give you a good example. We had Glenn Borders on the other day. We're having Pat Farmer come on soon to talk a little bit about. Oh yeah, to talk about like the union stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like you know, because if this is a mug that you drink out of, okay, or it's a prop, and those places can't. You know, there's I don't want to call it politics, but like it's a little bit, there's a system there and you don't want to get outside of it. As you mentioned with the credits. Yeah. So you come up with a script and whatnot. You don't necessarily get written by, but you might get story by. And then there's the teleplay, and then there's all these different things. Yeah. What was your sweet spot? Like what credit, like when you had a script, was there a goal for that script that you would get, or did it just all kind of work out in the wash as to how it would work out as to what kind of credit you would get on there?
You know, I was just trying to get in.
Right.
You know, you're just trying to get in. And so when you get in, you're in. And then, you know, that bridge, everybody, I don't know if this still exists today, but everyone was like, you can't get into sitcoms.
Right.
You're a late night writer. That's where you stay, is late night. You know, and it's like, and I believed them.
Yep.
Until I heard, no, don't listen to them. You can make the break, but it takes time. Yep. And so when they call and they say, hey, it doesn't, you know, it's a guild job.
Yep.
It goes towards your pension. It goes towards your health. Yep. You get residuals on it. It, you know, it makes you more established. You know, it's just like, thank you. And sometimes, you know, you're in writers' rooms where everybody kind of breaks the stories and writes them together. And, you know, everybody gets a written by credit. And then other times, you know, there are shows where, you know, I remember for the finale of Everybody Hates Chris, we all pitched. And so I got the story credit for the finale. And then it was written by one of my favorite writers of all time, Don Rio. I mean, he's unbelievable. You know, he started in like MASH and stuff.
Oh, that's
crazy. He's just so cool. And he created Blossom and My Wife and Kids. And he's just cool. Oh. Yeah, he's awesome. And then Ollie directed the finale. So it was the three of us. And it was like, whoa, baby. I mean, that was so cool.
Fun.
Yeah, and so you just go with it. You know, and everybody who creates the show or is the showrunner or whatever, you know, you just go with it. If you get a story on this one, you just trust that the next one it'll work out the other way or whatever. And sometimes maybe you shouldn't write it. You know, there are episodes where you shouldn't write if you don't. They say write what you know.
Yes. You
know, I knew that Crazy Chin because it, you know, and luckily someone told me early on. You know, the most personal stories are the most universal. You know, so well, what's the most personal? That was the most personal thing I could think of that I could turn into funny.
Yes.
You know, so
Stephen King talks about that. His book on writing is one of my favorite. I love when a genius or somebody who's super prolific can, for lack of a better term, dumb it down so I can understand it. I love when, you know, if they can make it so I can understand it, clearly they are a very good communicator of such concepts. I mentioned Elizabeth Gilbert earlier too, talking about these big, you know, concepts like inspiration and understanding it. But when King talked about that, you write what you know, like that is such a beautiful, simple piece of advice that so many people try and stretch themselves into places that they're not. Maybe they're stretching themselves into places that they want to be, whatever, when really at the end of the day, it comes down to what you know. And I want to get to the book. I want to talk about the book here because you're going to come back. I'm demanding it. I'm not asking, I'm demanding, because I feel this synergy and I just love this so much. You know, but we got to talk about the book. Now, first and foremost, my boy Scott Ryan is the one who set this up. I love Scott. Talk about a guy who loves pay it forward, a guy who loves kindness. Scott is that guy. And then he wrote, in my opinion, it's my favorite. I love Carter's book. I love Zinnemann's book, but this book talking about the last 6 weeks, you know, it's my favorite run of any television show ever is the last 6 weeks of Late Show. It was a magic moment.
Great idea for a book.
Oh, it was so good.
Yeah.
And in the oral history, Scott kind of kept out of it. He didn't write very much of it at all. It was all just quotes from the people who were there. So he turned me on to you and the book and all that. And he set this up, and I just appreciate Scott. Shout out to Scott. So I want to know about the book, because clearly all of these things that you're talking about, including the chase your dreams part, like I just appreciate anybody who gets the message out there to go after what it is that you're passionate about. I host a men's mental wellness podcast as well. My wife's building a men's mental wellness app, and that's where I got my podcasting chops, if I have any. And there are so many men who are in their middle age right now who don't go for what they want. The reason this podcast exists is that very reason. I want to talk about this book for sure, because I think that book is an extension of this concept, an extension of you, and I'm very excited for you. This is your first book, right?
Yeah, first book, and talk about write what you know, right? I mean, all I need to know I learned from my college bar. And
I took the segue. I didn't know if you were leaving it as low-hanging fruit or not, but I thought this is the perfect segue to move into the book. It's like you write what you know, right?
That's right. And that's exactly what I came now. This is something I always wanted to do. I always wanted to write a book. I always, wanted that story, which is so unique, but my story, but it never felt like the right time. Right. And then the pandemic hit, and I thought, this is a good time. And so, I put it together, and each page is like a piece of advice that I learned in that cathedral of knowledge known as a college bar. And it is relatable everywhere.
Yep.
And, and it was also, it was just fun to relive. That time was such a special time. College bars are such a special place.
Yes.
Now, they're also crazy. And for someone in Hollywood to say something's crazy, right?
Oh yeah,
it's crazy. Now, but what always used to get me, I worked in that bar every night. I'm in the dumpster, I'm in the thing, but what always get me is like Monday night anywhere else in the world at 11 o'clock, the lights are out, everybody's asleep. 11 o'clock on a Monday, it doesn't have to be a holiday. In a college bar, you cannot get in. And somehow. It always used to get me. I'd look around and everybody's, really having a great time, and people from all over the world. There's a million different, nationalities and every kind of person, people that do not mix.
Yep.
They're in there. No one's getting hurt. Yep. Everybody's a friend. Yep. Everybody's there for the same reason. How do we have the most fun and drink for the least amount of money?
Yep.
And what's cool too is because it was on the campus, so no one's driving, everybody's walking, everybody's just having a good time. And
ours was called the Well. That's the bar that's our college bar.
Where was that?
The Well, in Kelowna, British Columbia. So west coast of Canada. Yeah,
I love that. The Well. Yeah. Everybody's got one.
Yep.
So this was Maggie's, and it was really fun to put together the ideas, what was really fun for me. It's a perfect kind of, going full circle here with our conversation. The book really, each page is like a joke. That's what I loved about writing it. It's like joke writing. So when I was doing it, I was like, my God, I love this, because you don't do that anymore. I mean, now in scripted, I write TV series and movies and stuff, and you've got to have the joke muscle if you're going to write comedy.
Yep.
But it's not joke writing. The book was a lot like that. It's a lesson plus stuff. And then, I had the idea of putting an illustration on each page. And I'm not an illustrator. I can't illustrate. So I put together a book with like clip art.
Like storyboarded, kind of like
Yeah, rough ideas. Like, I'm a lefty. You could hardly read my penmanship, let alone.
Me too. Lefty and penmanship. Yep, same thing.
Most of my best friends are lefties, so that's why we're getting along so well.
There it is. Anyway,
So I put together the clip art, and then I was introduced to this really great illustrator in New York. Actually, she's an agent for illustrators, which I didn't even know existed. Her name's Ella Lupo, and she owns a company called Purple Rain Illustrators. Now I put together the book, but it didn't even have illustrations. It was just like descriptions of what each thing would be, clip art. And, and she introduced me to some people, and, we found this illustrator, Antonio Pina, who's in Italy, and he just did such a great job. He worked so hard. You're talking about, a joke writer. English is his second language, but he had such a great sense of humor. He had to be the guy. He got the jokes, and there was something so cool about this. I think you'll get it, and I think anybody would understand. There was something so fun for me to send my English page to him with my description of what I was thinking, with my clip art, and to see what he ended up with. And they're very different kind of, cool illustration. I mean, he's a really talented guy, and his stuff's in the New Yorker, and he sent me his stuff from the, Ella sent me his stuff from the New Yorker, or his site. I mean, he's funny, really. Antonio is great. Yep. So it was such a fun process with the time frame. I'd send him something, at the end of the workday. And when I'd wake up in the morning, I'd have a few drafts of what it was supposed to look like. So, yeah, and the book came together really nicely, and it was a blast. And, my goal with it, too, is not only to, in that intro, I talk about pursuing your dreams and applying those lessons that I learned into my life now. Yep. But also, I think the book has a lot of heart. And I think that, for graduation, I love Dr. Seuss. Love it. Me too. Love all the places you'll go. Love Dr. Seuss. But I thought, we need a new the places you'll go. We need a new graduation gift, a new thing. So like that, modern day lessons. And that's why, that was another thing in my head, so there's some stuff.
What a beautiful concept. That is a really beautiful idea. Yeah. And it would make a great gift for that kind of a thing. It's whimsical. It's got whimsy to it, and whimsy is such a beautiful thing. But it's based all out of anecdotes, right?
That's right, and it doesn't take long to read. It's funny. It's got it's got that stuff, and that was the idea. And these guys at Fayetteville Mafia Press, Scott, they got it immediately. Yep. And supported it and supported me. And I one of our first conversations, they said how much they loved Dave, and I saw his book, of course, and how much they back writers, and that's proven to be true. So it was a great match, and and it's a lot of fun. It just dropped, and I've been doing a lot of press for it, and it's cool to see it online everywhere, and in LA. I just saw it for the first time in a I don't know if you have Kitson stores in New York City anymore, but there's a Kitson in my neighborhood, which is like a cool gift shop kind of place. Yep. I saw it in the window. I took a picture. Tomorrow in the paper here, a piece is going to be out about it, and it's just been crazy fun. I'm having a blast doing it, and it's been different. I've never had a book out there before, and I love doing a new thing too, while I'm doing the other stuff. So it's such a fun experience. My wife and I wrote a book a couple of years ago, and it's surreal. It is a very different thing. Yeah. And getting out and talking about it. Let me ask you this: what did you learn in the process of writing the book and putting it together and stuff at the end? We certainly learned a lot of lessons between the first day where we knew what was happening. We were putting pen to paper, and then it was released at the end, and we could kind of look at it back. What were some of the things that you learned personally about that? About the writing of the book? What's anything? Yeah. What's the title of your book, by the way? It's called She Changed Me, One Ordeal, Two Perspectives. My beautiful granddaughter, it's not a downer book. She's okay. Everything's good. When my granddaughter was 18 months old, my wife actually, my granddaughter is like everything to me. Like, she slept over at our house at least one night a week since she was 2 weeks old. She's 4 years old now. I take her to MMA twice a week. She sleeps over still one night a week. After this, I get to go spend my day with her. It was like my best day ever. These two conversations, you Paul, and then hanging out with Alara is like, it's my best day ever. So she's okay, but
We thought we were going to BC Children's Hospital to get a tumor removed or a cyst removed. It turns out it was a tumor. Turns out we left Kelowna, didn't come back from Vancouver for 5 months. She's okay. She's cancer free. Everything's good now. But the book is a flip book. I wish I had it down here, a copy of it down here. It's a flip. It's One Ordeal, Two Perspectives by Mike Chisholm. You start it. By the time you get to the center of the book where all the pictures are, the beautiful little girl, and everything's good, happy ending. It's all the lessons I learned through that experience. If you flip the book, it's She Changed Me, One Ordeal, Two Perspectives by my wife, Candace Chisholm. And it's the lessons that she learned. And they're completely different lessons. And we wanted to take a negative, turn it into a positive. And we wanted to put something out in the world that would be a resource for grandparents, because there's not a lot out there for grandparents who have potentially mortally ill grandchild. And so a lot of crazy stories. So anyway, there's in a nutshell, that's our book. And it ends up being a very happy book. We learn a lot about ourselves. And so that's why I'm curious, like,
it's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that with me. It's beautiful.
Thanks for asking.
I'm sorry you had to go through it.
It's
and
okay.
I'm so glad she's okay on the other side.
Turned out really, really good on the other side. So it was really good. And I was actually, Rick Sheckman, may he rest in peace. I miss Shecky every single day. He worked for Dave for 32 years. That was actually something that he and I bonded over. He and I, the Letterman podcast, there's a whole bunch of lily pads, why this thing exists. Shecky is a big one. And he and I bonded over when I just got back from BC Children's Hospital during the pandemic. That's when he and I got to know each other, because he had a child in his life that had been affected. So it's all full. So everything, there are no coincidences. I'm a complete believer in that. And a lot of these little things add up. But writing of the book, I got to know myself in a whole bunch of different ways, because you're constantly internalizing as you're coming up with the perfect words, the perfect sentences, the perfect feelings. You're trying to convey what's inside on the page. I imagine in going through this, you did the same.
Yeah, that's beautiful, that story you just told. It's a beautiful story. And the thing I learned is it just reiterated what I knew, which is just to always go with my gut and do what I love. Write what I want to read, write what I want to see, what is fun for me.
Yep.
And that always seems to be the thing that works, the thing you can't get out of your head. And I think that's probably with every creative endeavor or every endeavor, because I came from business and I have, such a business brain too, in addition to the creative side, that's why last night I was watching a documentary about SpaceX. I love space. And I love, you see what, what Elon did, just pursuing his passion.
Was it the one on Paramount, the 3-part one?
No, it was on Netflix. Okay. It was, I think it's called Return to Space.
I've watched that one too. I'm fascinated by it. Yeah, love
that
it's
one. The guy takes his first 100 million or whatever it was to do the rockets. And, he obviously embraces failure.
Yep.
Because everything keeps crashing somehow. And I know everything about space. I love space because it makes any kind of concern down here seem, come on, are you kidding me? We're on a planet.
Absolutely.
We're spinning. It's nuts. We can't.
Hurling through the galaxy at 50,000 miles an hour. Like, absolutely.
Yeah, the traffic stinks today. Yeah, but guess what? We're on a planet. Right? It's crazy. So so I was watching it last night, and and you just think, my God, that's so cool that he did that. And you can tell he has a passion for that kind of stuff. And and you think about those astronauts, they're going on the ship and there's bad weather, so they get off of the ship, and it's just like what these guys gotta love it.
Yep.
So I love anybody who goes for what they love.
It's very clear. I love that. I've used this phrase far too many times, but a fisherman can always recognize another fisherman. I certainly see and hear and recognize you. Okay, so all I need to know, I learned in my college bar.
Yes.
Where is the best? Do you have a picture, like for the thumbnail and all that? You got a picture of you holding the book? If not, grab the book and we'll make it right now. There it is right now.
Here it is.
Yeah.
All I need to know, I learned from my college bar.
And where can you get it?
Yeah, so your buddy Scott, and David, they own Fayetteville Mafia Press.
Yep.
You can get it there directly from them.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure it's available, everywhere else too, like Amazon.
Yeah, you can find it on the Amazons, but sometimes it's better to
go right direct.
Go direct.
And,
yeah.
And for effortless, like to make it easy for our buddy Scott, because we both love him.
Yep.
And then and just these are the the types of really great illustrations in the book that are black and white, and the guy crushed them. The guy,
Yep.
he just did such funny stuff. So I appreciate you letting me hold it up, and I loved being on the show. This was so cool, and I can't wait to show you my check stubs next time.
We're going to do a collectibles episode for sure. And yeah, like, please, I'm glad that we know each other now, and I can't wait to connect more. And I'm a big collaborator. I just love that. I believe I'm a huge believer that collaboration kicks the crap out of competition anytime. I just love collaboration. And I certainly feel that with you today. And I can't wait to, but before the next episode as well, I would love to get, if you get a couple ideas of bits or things that were that you wrote and had on the show, maybe by that point we've had permission from Pants to show a few clips here and there, but we certainly Don Giller, I don't know if you know Don Giller or not, but the biggest Letterman historian that the world has ever seen, he's a part of this show as well, and he does. So if you can describe some of the things that you did and you want clips, we'll get them for you, and hopefully we can get permission to go online. Oh yeah, no, we can.
You know
what? We'll make that happen.
I don't know if you could do this, but I would love this. And then we'll cut this out. We'll be done. But this is unbelievable. But so I come out here on the Late Late Show. I get in a sitcom, do all that. The Late Late Show needs a new host, right? They're gonna Craig leaves. They're gonna find a new host.
Yeah.
So I tell the guy.
They had 5 people they tried out, right? They tried out a bunch of different people.
Yeah, one of the guys is the producer that brought me into Raymond. I say to him, I said, I used to write on that show. You should be the host. Let's do this together. And he got Ray to call
Peter LaSalle, probably.
That's the guy who I met in his office a couple times. Loved him. So I couldn't even believe when I met him, because he's Carson, right?
Peter LaSalle is like, I want to talk about Peter LaSalle to anybody who will talk about him. We had Bill Carter on a few weeks ago, and I got him to talk about Peter LaSalle, a gentleman, talk about kind, but also expert. Yes, absolutely.
When I was in his office, I couldn't believe I was in his office.
Absolutely.
So anyway, but so shockingly, years later now, from that Late Late Show gig, I'm in another, I'm in scripted now. Me and that guy get the studio, the Late Late Show studio, for like a week to rehearse. He was one of the guys. So I'm in there late at night, no one else. It's just, and I think, holy cow, I cannot believe this happened again.
That's awesome. Well, Jeffrey Peterson, the guy who played Jeffrey Peterson's coming on in a couple of weeks. He's coming on the Letterman podcast. So lots of
great stuff.
Anything Pants is all about, the Letterman podcast is all about that. Again, brother from another mother.
Success. No doubt about it. I hope you take off.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. So I've already won. The dreams have already come true. The things are that's already happened. Everything else is cake. But I mean, I can eat some cake. I have no problem with that.
Higher and higher. You're going to go higher and higher, man.
Oh, Adam, you're a sweetheart.
And tell your
Adam,
wife I said hi, too. She seems so cool.
Candy's awesome. I appreciate that. Well, and the next time we're down in LA, we're doing something. We'll do lunch. We'll do whatever. Like, thank you so much. Okay,
Thanks
Adam
so much
Lorenzo, all I need to know, I learned from my college bar, available, Fayetteville Mafia Press. We'll send links in the description when we put the show out and all of that in the comments and all that. Thank you very much. That has been another episode. I'll cut it off right here. That's been another episode of the Letterman podcast with Mike Chisholm. Coincidentally, I am Mike Chisholm. Thank you and good night.
Overcoat and underpants.